Kelly Wyre. Kelly Wyre is fine too. Yeah. So many years ago, I had been doing a online writing contest. It was kind of this. It was a setup, sort of like I guess reality TV, sort of like American Idol sort of rules, except it was for writing. And I had been doing this for months. I was lucky enough that I managed to make it through months and months of elimination rounds and that sort of thing. Hundreds of people were competing in this thing. And I had gotten all the way down. I was in the top 2 and I had finished, but I had been writing something every single week for months at that point. And so I was like, okay, well, I want to keep the ball rolling. And I'd done some short stories. I'd gotten some of those published. I had been writing in the horror genre. And I had a friend who said, well, have you ever heard of fan fiction? And I was like, well, yeah, I've heard of fan fiction. And I used to read quite a bit of it. And the naughtier, the better. and so
I just heard that there's Bon Appetit fan fiction today.
Bon Appetit. Oh my God! There's Sesame Street fan fiction. It's a truly it's a.
I mean, it's not good as in it's not G-rated. It's like there's Tyrannosaurus Rex fan fiction.
I know. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles still my favorite. I mean, it's just.
What were you writing? Your fan fiction in?
Oh well, I started writing in Naruto. It's a. Are you familiar with anime manga? Yay.
You're gonna beat me if we take a test. No. Not really, but I think I know how to spell that. Is it N-A-A-U-T-O or something like that?
It's N-A-R-U-T-O, Naruto.
Okay, totally wrong.
And no, you have to understand. The friend who introduced me to this, she speaks Japanese, so she beat the pronunciations into me. Okay, so I have anyway. So that's why my voice goes strange. Like, Naruto, it's whatever. So she told me about this, and one thing led to another, and I started writing stories on a lark. It was completely just for her. Wasn't even thinking about it. I was also doing my own stuff. I was actually writing a horror story about it's kind of, I guess, more psychological thriller or whatever you want to call it, about a psychopath and his pet. And that was what I was working on. And I'd been writing this fan fiction. I was posting it on a couple of places online, as you do, watching anime, being my usual geeky self. And I ran into this person who also wrote fan fiction, was also posting, and loved the world that I was making. Because when I started writing fan fiction, I was really uncomfortable, I guess, writing it in world. I was like, I don't want to write about a bunch of 12-year-old ninjas, which is what Naruto was mostly about. I was like, no, I'm not. This isn't my bag. I said, we're gonna take it all out. I need my own world. I need this, because one of my favorite things to do in creative anything is world making. I love it. It's pastime. It's something I can do to relax. I love making worlds. So I made this huge world, and my friend helped me name it, and we called it Mono Shizukanahi. I will tell you how to spell that later.
If you wrote it down in an email, I could actually tell you if I wanted to dig it up.
Yeah, exactly. It's Mono Shizukanahi is how you say that. It means tranquil fire. So she helped me name this thing, and so I started writing. And I kind of...
That has a connection, right, to something in our world.
Right? It does. Mono was kind of just, Mono for short. Mono was just sort of this place that I was writing fan fiction just as a way to kind of like take these archetypes, because that's what really good fiction is, right? It's just a bunch of archetypes that have been remanifested. I mean, that's what Harry Potter is. That's what a lot of fantasy. It's just it's the hero, it's the wizard, it's the fallen hero, so on and so forth. And so I just basically took these archetypes, which were much beloved and represented in this particular anime, and I picked them up and I put them in my own world. And I kind of kept pushing the boundaries to see when somebody was going to notice that this really was less fan fiction and more just me borrowing characters' names and writing my own stuff. People didn't seem to mind. And I had this weird, 15 minutes of internet fame in a very particular, corner niche of the internet.
When was this, though? When did this happen?
This was probably 2010 or so.
Oh, really? 2007, 8. That's the perfect time frame for kind of the innocence, right? Where people are starting to socialize more. Facebook is a little bit old at that point, about 3 years.
Yep, Twitter was just getting really good and started. Exactly. Totally. And at the time, I had just had my first short story collect, because out of that writing contest, I actually got an offer from a publishing house. They were like, would you like to put your short stories together and make a short story collection? I was like, well, yeah, I mean, please. So I was doing that and writing this fan fiction, and I ran into this person, and she just loved my world. She said, this is just so cool, and then she introduced me to something that was completely new to me, role playing. I had never it was like, what in the world is this nonsense? So she wanted basically to pretend to be characters in my world. And the way we ended up doing it, because she was a writer as well, the way we ended up doing it, about probably halfway through writing this stuff, we realized, oh my God, I think we're writing a novel. So one thing led to another, and that's how New Amsterdam began. So I didn't want to write in Mona Shizukanahyu because that was what I considered my fan fiction world. All the fandom characters were in it. It was kind of like there was a lot of gets for people who were watching those animes and mangas and that kind of thing. So I wanted to create a new landscape that I could put what I called more the adult / real world / whatever souped up version of these characters. Give them my own names, give them their slightly different backgrounds, that kind of stuff. Basically, just flesh them out in my world, in my version. And I needed a name for a city that basically combined kind of Tokyo's landscape with the New York City borough system, because they were kind of divided up into similarly, like as New York is divided in boroughs. Chicago's like organized crime and Gotham's darkness. And so I was like, okay, I need a name for this. And so I'm a relatively fan of the band They Might Be Giants, and I don't know if you know the song Istanbul, Constantinople. Yeah. Okay, and so I was like, Old New York was once New Amsterdam, so I was like, oh, there we go, done. And then so I just literally named it New Amsterdam. There's no historical context whatsoever.
Well, what's cool about that is, though, you can actually claim New Amsterdam as the location of this thing. I mean, the idea that you're writing fantasy and it can be that place in history, right? Or no, it can't be at all.
Yeah, it can be whatever. I mean, it's choose your own adventure, right?
Oh, is it?
Well, no. I mean,
the mind of the reader, basically.
Yeah, in the mind of the reader, exactly. So, and so we started writing books, and so she and I wrote, I think, 3 together. Wow. 2 or 3, I don't remember. We wrote more than we published because we had a couple in the bank, and then we had a falling out. And she went her way, and of course, but the world was mine, and we signed some paperwork to make sure that all of the creative content and all this other stuff like stayed with me, made it kind of official and formal. And then I carried on and wrote a couple other novels in that particular world. I've got a couple of more in the to be written pile that I'm doing, and then I've also simultaneously been also carrying on with the fantasy and the horror, and I've written some other things too. I've written some het romance and that kind of thing. But the genre of it all turned out to be male romance, which I'm telling you, I never in a million, if you had told me when I was like in college taking classes that someday I was going to be this was what the book I was going to be writing, I would have laughed in your face. It's like, there's no way I'm going to be doing that, but here we are. So
it's character, right? I mean, that's what dictates the end of the day when one write the flavors that you add to the stew or whatever. Male romance is interesting. I borrowed a book. It was about vampires, and it was a romance built around men, basically. It's good stuff. I mean, it's not bad at all in terms of, compelling fiction, doesn't it?
I mean, it's all about story. I mean, these
all
are
about
stories
story.
Exactly. And my shtick was I loved writing. I just really love writing about incredibly flawed, tragic, broken, slightly insane people who manage to find other people who love them for them regardless. And it's not one of those, oh, I want to fix you. I want to change you. Oh, I want to figure out a way to make you better. No, I actually really just dig your darkness, and I just want to get in there with you, and like, let's just be together and be happy in this. So was kind of my spin on the stuff. So it's like, I don't know. I've actually not read that much male fiction outside of a couple of people. Okay. I've read a ton of fan fiction. Good God. I think I found every bottom on a few of the fan fiction websites. But because I read tons before I started, I do that with anything that I write. I read a ton of whatever it is I think I'm going to be writing, just to be like, okay, love that, hate that, love this, so on. And I'm a big fan of, I write with an author named A.F. Henley. And Henley writes what I think Henley terms like sweet male romances. And so I've read all of Henley's stuff, love it. It's good, it's light reading, it's just kind of like peaceful, calm, kind of easy stuff. It's good. And so I mean, I've read some, but I ended up writing it kind of not accidentally, but I read someplace that the things that come up creatively, the projects that you don't expect, those are always the ones that lead you in the directions that'll be most rewarding, fulfilling, or interesting, or just fun. And so when creative stuff comes up, totally. So whenever people come up, I mean, we called and was like, hey, you want to do a podcast? I'm like, sure, let's do this. always say yes to creative stuff. You never know where it's going to
Right?
go.
I mean, you never know. Exactly. I really appreciate it, being able to talk to you. Unfortunately, I have a toothache, so like I feel like my mouth isn't working the way I want it to. You know what I mean? It's like every time you bang that tooth, it's like, ah, don't say ow on the microphone. Oh, and then I'm pacing and my microphone's not even working. So this is creativity, isn't it? You don't know what's going to happen. Now I'm stuck in front of my monitor and I have to talk to you in a new way. Like your characters, they are pursuing romances that you wouldn't normally do yourself. It's completely fascinating. Like, for instance, your website says you're in the paranormal, right?
Oh, very much, yes.
Yeah, and you write about horror, which is
Yes.
obviously connected. Now, the type of paranormal that you pursue outside of your writing, is it similar to what you write about, or do you do more cryptids type horror writing where there's a monster and whatnot?
Have you ever heard of a genre, weird fiction?
Oh hell yeah, Lovecraft. Fuck yeah.
Yes, thank you. Lovecraft. Yes, yes. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
that's
Kindred
big right
Soul.
now. And it doesn't have to be necessarily Lovecraft. I consider some
No.
of the fiction that I write weird as well, but I don't like Lovecraft. I can't stand the guy's writing. It's so purple. You know what
The
I mean?
only one I've ever read by him was the shorts that I liked was the short story. Oh my God, and I'm not going to remember the name of the dang. Um, God, it's not going to come to me at
Doesn't
all. But
matter, right? Because he died so long ago and he was such
true.
a racist. And, and
Oh
he
no,
was
there were
writing,
so many problems with Lovecraft. Totally,
but
but
he
like
was
he.
churning stuff out too, right? I mean, he was
Yes.
ripping through it to make a living. And now, what it was really interesting to me when I was going through school, I took the literature of the occult class, and it was basically a short fiction book, an anthology of like 12 or 15 authors writing Lovecraftian fiction. None of it was Lovecraft. It was all Stephen King and these various other authors writing within that world. And it just kind of opened up my eyes going, wow, this is neat. I
You
like
know,
it.
I took a class in college. It was a 1 hour like random credit class. It was like symbolism in horror films or
Mm,
symbolism in horror fiction. That was what it was. And the gentleman who taught that class is a guy named Dale Bailey. And I don't know if you've ever read anything by him. He's an author. He writes weird fiction and it's really cool stuff. He does amazing. He wrote The Resurrection Man's Legacy. He was on HBO's Masters of Horror.
cool.
He's done some really cool stuff. So he taught this class and same kind of thing. It was going through like how really good horror is all about symbolism and it's all about taking a state of the mind and making it representing it by some sort of like thing that goes bump in the night or a creature in the woods or a psychosis of someone in the house or whatever, like the literal lady in the attic is just the stuff that we don't want to look at, that's
Mm-hmm.
that we've put away forever and we've hidden and we don't want to face, right? So love horror, love it, love it, love it. I am and weird
But
fiction is definitely.
Lovecraftian is different than that, though, isn't it? It's the weird stuff is, I keep wanting to stand up. If I start pacing, I'm going to fade. So if I fade, tell me to sit down.
Okay.
Lovecraft is interesting, though, because it's about something that takes control of you. Like it
Mm-hmm.
removes your ability to decide for yourself. And the thing that's doing it is so huge and incomprehensible that even fighting against it makes no sense.
Exactly. The devil made me do it. Yeah. And just sort of because I think we all do things that we don't understand why we made that choice or why we made that decision. And it really does feel like, there are times when in your life where you're like, I'm not sure
You
who I
wish you
was in
had
the moment.
somebody
Yeah.
cosmic to blame on it.
Oh, utterly. I'm
It
always
was
looking to blame
Cthulhu.
something cosmic. Yeah, it was Cthulhu. Totally.
It was
But no,
Cthulhu.
I love writing about interdimensional. Like I do a lot of interdimensional writing. Case in point, I've been working on this thing. It's called The King of Nightmare.
Mm,
It's been on my Patreon now for a while. I've been doing it kind of like by chapter,
mm.
and it is a horror, fantasy, family drama, whatever uncomfortable genre that ends up fitting into. Um, and it was interesting because the idea came to me. I was sitting in my office. It was late at night, as it usually was, and minding my business. I was on the phone with a friend and this critter kind of wandered into my brain and sat down and said, my name is Milud Akin. In the language of fear, my name means he who walks. And I'm like, and I'm listening now. Okay, cool. What the hell?
So is
So
that how your creativity works? There's something that actually does attract you to
you're fading again. Come back to me.
creativity. Oh, hey, sit down, see how it works? I was
Sit, Bryan,
pacing.
sit.
You said something interesting and I went immediately to my feet. Wow. So something visits you and you put that down creatively. Is that how it works?
It's kind of like that. I really feel like it's people sort of the way I describe my creativity, and this is gonna we're gonna start kind of wandering into what I call frou territory, where it's like, which there's nothing wrong with that territory. It's a wonderful place to
I
visit.
love that territory.
I love it. It's fantastic. I believe in it myself, but I like to respect that some people look at me kind of cross-eyed and like, what are you talking about?
I'm agnostic towards everything. I need
Yeah,
absolute proof.
yeah, precisely. I believe in everything until proven differently. That's kind of where I'm at. But I really think that creatively bent people are closer to, whether you want to call it another dimension, if you want to call it what, some religions would refer to as, I don't know, heaven, muses, angels, whatever that is, whatever your terminology is. I think that creative people, for whatever means, whether it's just the way our brains are designed physically, whether it's experiences that we've had, whether it's just literal talent or a desire for escapism. I think I've not yet met a creative person yet that's not like, no, I really love to escape this reality. I want to get out of here for whatever reason. And I feel like wherever we go, that place we all go, I feel like it's this place that you can wander into, and there are things there that want to tell you their stories. They want to have a voice, they want to have manifestation. And so I call it, tapping into the ley line, because sometimes, and I can always tell when it's about to happen. There's like this weird, there's skin sensation for me. There's some like weird kind of like, it almost feels like something's come into the room with me, a presence or whatever. And then I get images in my brain and here we go. And then the way that I start writing stories is I just talk to whatever character has shown up, however big, weird, scary, strange, whatever. I mean, the King of Nightmare is not it's not a calm inducing kind of individual, right? Yeah, but and I mean, he has his thing, and he's the king of the fallen paradigm, and we had a chat, and thus the book was created. So basically the book takes place there's 7 archetype kind of gods, so your walkers, and then you've got 7 humans, and it's the story of how they're interconnected. And I took this and I wrote it and I did all this, and I was going to go the traditional publishing route, because by this point I'd published, I think, 10 or 12 books through various means. I was very blessed to be able to have that done. I was writing with amazing people, and just kind of kept going on and on with the romance world. And so I was like, okay, I want to go kind of traditional route, because that was always kind of the way I thought that my writing career would go. It's like you do the short story thing, you graduate into novels, you find the agent, you kind of, you write under contract. This is just what you do, right? And so I cold called agents.
Anymore? I mean, you're
no,
actually
it isn't.
That's the problem, isn't it? Because 10 years
totally.
You could have done it.
Yeah, totally. It's not the way it is anymore. And
people are saying they make $5,000 a year.
You're pacing again. We're gonna have to like nail your butt to the chair.
Oh man, I get excited when I talk about this, because this is the professional side of it, isn't it? It's like, you think about what we do and what actually it is we earn from what we do. Even professionally, it's a pittance.
Utterly.
Yeah.
Yeah, utterly. I mean, I think I read some terrifying statistic that's like most published authors make something between like $1,000 and $5,000 a year. I mean, it's not much. I mean, some are lucky to be up there in the 15 to 30, but I mean, it's minimum wage. It's definitely low. And so anyway, so I started cold calling agents, and I found one in New York who wanted to have a chat with me, and we did, and he wanted the rest of the manuscript, and I sent that over, and he basically came back to me and told me that, and now I have to understand, this was a gentleman who said that he was interested in female horror and fantasy authors. Like, he wanted to give that more of a voice, because women don't write in this genre very much, or don't have a lot of representation.
Do they not? Because I would think it is a very female-dominated genre right now.
Not horror. Horror. No, horror is not.
Even with Stephanie Meyer's, like the vampire thing that happened.
And that's more, I would actually argue that is not horror, that is young adult fantasy, because you're still talking about,
I'll accept the argument, because
it's all how you split the genre.
Vampires aren't cryptids, are they? They're not really.
No, exactly. These are not.
They're kind of romantic.
They're also romanticized, right? I mean, literally the vampires in that thing sparkled, for God's sake.
You want to get bit by the vampire in the story.
Look, I have gotten thrown out of bookstores because of my rants and tirades on Twilight. We don't need to go here.
But she's our ilk, though, right? She started fan fiction. She became whatever she is. If you like her books, I couldn't read her books. I couldn't watch the
No,
movie
she
either.
definitely didn't start fan fiction. I will argue that quibble there because fan fiction has been written about anime and manga since God, for at least the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, she definitely had a major play. Like Twilight fiction, fan fiction was the reason why, 50 Shades of Grey came about,
Oh,
because
yeah,
she was
yeah.
writing, blah,
Maybe
blah,
that's where I'm
blah.
confusing it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that was a huge thing because obviously she wrote fan fiction about Twilight, and that's how she didn't change the names and completely plagiarized the movie Secretary with James Spader while she was at it. So moving on, I have lots of soapboxes we could get on, but back to, so the gentleman says that
Success
he
stories too, aren't they? I mean, in terms of
utterly, yeah. I
like
mean,
how is it possible? But then you kind of wonder, is it them? Is it a person, or is it the corporate juggernaut kind of pulling strings and making things look a certain way?
I would say that because there are so many options now for how stories can get out there, whether that's audio, YouTube, self-publishing, Amazon, whatever, there are so many options and ways to get stories out there that the quote traditional methodologies are basically only looking to publish stuff they know they can make a bang and a buck off of. And so that's going to be the stuff that's shocking. That's going to be the stuff that's, oh my God, I can't believe this got published. That's going to be the stuff that is basically Harry Potter remade, right? So they're
Yeah.
really, that's why everything's young adult right now. I mean, I love young adult fiction, absolutely adore it, but it is just the majority of your bookstore right now.
Well,
And
J.K. Rowling killed it, didn't she? She put
she,
she put a pull in it, said it's like, this is the best. You guys
yep,
aren't going to be able to conquer this. It's nothing that you can do. And everything since, it's been kind of popular, is kind of try to capitalize on that child in danger coming out on top scenario.
it's the hero story. It's the classic hero story. It's in like, the 10, plots of all time or whatever. It
Joseph
is the,
Campbell, yeah.
yep, exactly. It is the young hero protagonist who finds out he's on a quest and he has magical powers. Boom, done. And I love J.K. Rowling because she made the entire world read. I think that's amazing because I really feel like, before all of that wildfire started, we were having a lot of conversations about how books and reading is dying because, the social media was just coming online and that sort of thing. And then J.K. Rowling was like, no, 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 no. Hang on. I'm going to write these 7 books and everyone in the entire world is going to read them. And so
But
I
she
think that's amazing.
preceded it, though. That's the unfortunate thing about J.K. Rowling, is you could say she came out in 1997, 96, 97, 98, before the internet was really a thing with that first book. I discovered
Mm-hmm,
it in 2000 when the 3rd or 4th book got published. And
mm-hmm.
then you were already on the tidal wave as it crashed into the shore. I mean, you were a Harry Potter fan at that point. But it wasn't the internet that made her famous. She was pre-internet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
she even made Amazon what it is. So like, you can even give J.K. Rowling credit for Amazon, which is another $1 billion institution.
Oh yeah, well it's just like Jake, or Rowling is to modern day fantasy and I would say literature what Stephen King did to the horror genre and what J.R.R. Tolkien did to fantasy, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
I
these
don't think
are
J.K. will ever duplicate it. I don't think she'll ever be able to say, here's my second, Harry
no.
Potter series that's just as good. Not only did she torpedo herself, but she's tried, and her fiction just doesn't stand up to whatever that was.
But then again, it doesn't have to.
It
I mean,
doesn't. But you mentioned Stephen King in the same breath, and that guy can't end a novel, but he can definitely publish 4 or 5 a year.
a freaking man. He can't end it. Stephen King is the best character
Oh man,
writer
I'll suck you
that,
in.
I mean, my God, he has the capability of writing a character and you literally do not care what that character does or the plot inconsistencies or anything else. You are so invested in the characters he's writing about, you don't care about anything else. And sometimes he'll write things like some of my favorites. I love Doomakey. I love the Dark Tower series. I mean, they changed my life. I love, I'm not actually a big fan of a lot of what they call the earlier classic ones. I mean, it's not like I don't like The Stand, but I think Swan Song by Robert McCammon did it much better.
Oh,
You know,
Stan's fantastic. I loved it. It sucked.
yeah.
I read it when I was sick over like a day. I was like, this is like a
Mhm.
1,000-page novel, and I read it in a day. That's what Stephen King is. He's like the buffet of literature. You just gobble him up and like, what did I just eat?
Exactly. It's wonderful.
What
And
was that?
yeah, exactly. You're like, I think I had something here. But no, but anyway, a couple of tangents ago. So the Asian guy was like, I want this. And then he basically said, after he read the full manuscript, he said, no one's going to care about the fantasy and horror elements in this book. It's terrible. You have to cut all of that. And basically he wanted to take this novel and turn it into women's lit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, ugh. And so we had a conversation, and what may have been like the worst mistake in my writing career, or the best, we don't know. I said, you know what? Thank you very much, but that's not going to be the route that I go. I'm going
It's
to do
interesting
something else.
because what
Yeah.
you're doing is more community based, right? I mean, it sounds like
Hmm.
I was about to get up. Whew, I stopped myself. What you're doing is more community based. You're appealing to people saying, hey, you're a reader. I'm a publisher. I publish my own stuff. Come to me, right?
Exactly, exactly. I actually started this year. I started my own LLC to basically publish my novels, and the first one I did back in March, and I'm working on. I'm right now in the hell that is rewriting for King of Nightmare because it's been a little while now, so I've gone back and looked at it and gone, okay, there's like a massive plot hole there, and also there, and there. So fixing all that up and kind of and documenting it as I go. I'm going to do like a little YouTube series and that sort of thing, keep the patrons up to date and all of that, and then hopefully before the end of the year self-publish that beast, because the process taught me that there are going to be books that I'm okay turning over to a publisher, an agent, or just a publicist, and also a series of editors who do what they think will make the book better. And generally speaking, they're right. They're going to do things that you hadn't occurred to
Your
you.
goal is to work on a team, right? At the end of the
Yeah,
day, you want to be
yeah,
able to produce quality work and then be able to transform or transfer that to somebody and say, okay, run with it. Because that's how you make
yes,
movies and television shows and audiobooks and stuff. You're not going to be able to do everything.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And so
I agree. And
and so there's some that I'm going to be okay doing that, and then there's some that are going to be this kind of like, no, because all I could think of in that moment when he was like, you need to cut all these fantasy elements, the only thing I could think was, you don't understand. The main character, the fantasy guy that you want to cut, was the one who came and told me the story in the first place. I'm pretty sure if I cut him out of his own book, whatever it is that comes and talks to me is not going to trust me as much anymore.
but what's interesting, well, I would be irritated too. I'd be thinking to myself, I worked so hard to weave this in, and I wanted to make it look effortless, like it belonged. And you want me to strip it out? You know how much that would take? It would be a total rewrite. Then my mind would go to, why don't you just write him some story that he wants, see if he could sell it, and maybe put another name on the cover, right?
I mean, yeah, and like there's certainly things, and I definitely have what I in my head, like what I would
Is
call
he a
more commercial.
literary minded person or is he commercially minded? Can
I
you
think he's
throw
commercially
60,
minded. Yeah,
throw 60,000 more? Here's your book on women's lit. If he doesn't make any money for you, you don't make any money for him, I
precisely.
would think.
Hmm.
But I like your attitude. I'm kidding.
Well,
Um,
it's like I'm in this to tell stories. If telling the stories happens to at some point make me money, yay. If not, then that's why you have the day job.
did you publish New Amsterdam yourself? Did you self-publish that as well?
No, that was actually published by it was a series of started out with one publishing house. I've actually been So my short story collection was published by a group in New Zealand and
Mm,
also in London and also in Europe, London. And then the romance was picked up by an outfit called, you know what? Sadly, never actually been real clear on how you say their name. It was like a French, I think it was called Torque um, Press, and they picked up like I think the first two or three novels. They unfortunately went out of business and that's been a fascinating ride for me as well, watching these, because I worked with this press called Lucid, and they weren't obviously in the top six big publishing houses, right? But they definitely were making enough to be in, like, they were number like maybe 11, 12. They were
mm,
definitely holding their own in the romance and publishing industry, and Amazon just ate them up and spat them out.
mhm.
And it's been interesting watching the small presses, or even the not so small presses, the medium sized presses, just not be able to compete with the sales and the business model that is Amazon. So, but no, all of the New Amsterdam novels were not published by me. The only one that I've self
What's interesting
published would
about
be
that
King
though
of
is
Nightmare.
that you're the sales model that Amazon has in store. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? They require you to do all the work. The
Yes.
publishers require you to do all the work too, though, in a way.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I,
it's not a small amount of work, and I really like working with small press, honestly, because you do have a lot more input to things like, your back cover media and like, I've actually been able to art design some of my covers and that kind of stuff. So it's working with small presses has a lot of benefits and boons. You really do feel like it's a family, so that's been really cool.
who are you working with now? By yourself only? You're working.
Well, I've actually got no JMS books. I still got my male fiction, and then also the stuff that I'm working on with AF Henley, because AF Henley publishes out of JMS books as well. So that's the male genre, and I haven't tried I've moved away so much from short story format and that kind of thing. I want to take the rights have since returned to me for my short story collection, and I really want to revamp that and add some more content to it and redo it and put it back out there. So, but I've moved away so much from the short story format, and I've just been writing these long novel things for so long that that's kind of been my focus. So I'm mostly working on King of Nightmare and trying to get it out into the public, and then also in the background working on the male romance, but also I've got a graphic novel. Well, right now it is just a series of pages and a labor of love between myself and this artist I love, and she actually lives in the Netherlands. But maybe one day it might grow to be a graphic novel. We'll see. So,
are you the artist or are you the writer?
I'm the writer. I'm not the artist. She is the artist.
It's impressive. I've talked to a number of illustrators, and they're neat people doing a really, really neat thing. And as a writer, telling them what to do, it's kind of like, I would feel like you would be kind of intimidated. Like, use your art this way. But in reality, you just kind of mold them, aren't you?
Well, honestly, the way I work, because we're friends, so that helps a lot too. I mean, it helps if you know. I feel like there's a difference between walking to somebody and be like, "Hi, I'm going to be an illustrator of the day," right? It's like, okay. But what's interesting about this whole interaction I have with her is back in my fan fiction days when I was, again, it was this sort of odd sort of teeny tiny amount of it was like I can't understate this enough, but like teeny tiny amount of internet interest and fame. But I had amazing people who wanted to draw me all this art of my stuff, and there were a couple of them who were absolute artists, and they would come to me and they would say, I want to draw blah blah blah, give me references, give me information, give me, I mean, it was really an interesting process. And so and I've come from an advertising and marketing background, so and part of my job is working with a creative team and basically saying, hey, this is what the client wants, this is what we need to see from you, something in this field, and kind of learning how to translate those two languages, right? Because you were talking about the strict commercial side and what they want to see, and and that sort of thing, versus what the creative team wants to do, which is something interesting and innovative and unique and dynamic, and making those two worlds meet. And so it's kind of interesting to be doing that in the fandom world, where these artists would want to, they just want to know details, they want to know more, they want to dive deeper into these characters that they love. And it was a just amazing experience, but it also helped me really learn, okay, this is kind of what an artist needs to know in order to do something or whatever. Now, some, obviously, it was different experiences on different things, but some would just draw stuff and it was incredible. Everything that they did was amazing. And I just was like, I don't know why in the world people are doing this, but I love it. Thank God they are. And I've got a lot of it framed on my office wall, actually, because
that's really neat.
It reminds me of like, oh, wow, people love these stories. This is why we're doing this. And so working with her, the way we work is we talk about the world, right, that we're in, and then I write out I write out what looks like a script, or like a TV script or something like that, complete with character movement and that kind of stuff. Which like, here goes here, this, that, whatever, and this is what's said. And then I just basically turn that over to her and I say, do your thing. And and then we talk about dynamic angle and that kind of stuff. And then she just makes these. She does storyboards for me because she actually comes from an animation background, so she does that for a living. So she gives me storyboards and we talk about that, and then voila, the magic happens. And it's a learning experience for both of us, because I've started working on a graphic project once with another artist friend of mine, but we both got distracted by other shiny things, and so that never, which is completely fine. But this one, we're just both kind of learning together on how we want this to manifest, and it's really cool.
You've got a history in film, though, don't you?
Okay. I fell into it. I fell into an independent, that whole saying yes thing, right? You find yourself in interesting situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That was actually when I was in college, so it's been a minute. I was living in this really ridiculously strange, very haunted building when I was in college, and across my hallway, I noticed that these two guys had moved in. And they're very noticeable people, because one of them was 6'7", 6'8", and the other guy was every bit of 6'4". So you saw them coming, right? They're ducking through the damn doors. Well, on his door, he posted this thing, and it said auditions, movie, atrophy, come talk to me. And I'm like, I don't really just want to knock on somebody's door. So I literally went right down the hall. I was like one door down. And so I called the number and I talked to this guy, and he was he was doing filmmaking, and he and his partner were working on this stuff. You know, they were majoring in it, but they were also doing it on the side. They were trying to get into the indie circuit, like all this stuff. And so one thing led to another, and I ended up helping them write like their audition script. We went through the audition process together. There was a hilarious night where it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were in suburbia, and we were trying to film this car wreck scene, and I was in charge of making it look smoky. And so I'm like moderately in charge of pyrotechnics, which is just basically me lighting things on fire and throwing it. It was great. So we did all of that, and then I had a very minor part in the film as well, and then they put it all together, and then they took it to it wasn't like Sundance, but it was one of the film festivals, and they actually got a limited release on it. And
Wow.
So yeah, so I'm like, I have an IMDb page, and it's not actually a page. I'm just listed on IMDb. I don't keep up or anything, but it's on there, and I was like, well, that's cool.
That is neat. I mean, I don't like acting. I get very intimidated by the idea of it. But I've done it before. You know, I've been in front of the camera. I do not like it. I get really depressed. Like I write endless amounts of fiction. I super, super am hard on myself with the acting thing. So you didn't do it again after that, did you? That was your
Well,
only acting experience?
that was my only film. I did theater all through high school and college, and
Oh, so you've acted before. Okay.
yes, and then I have a YouTube channel, so I also sit and talk to myself in front of the camera too. So
You do the vlogging thing?
I do actually have a channel based on books. I'm a book fanatic, so it's basically just me doing. I actually filmed one this morning before I got on the phone with you. It's a book haul where it's like I'm just talking about books, and it's just for fun. It's like a little thing. And it started out actually as a way to do something for Patreon reward tiers, because it was like, hey, you guys want to see a video or a film, or do you want me to talk more about something to do with the writing process, or do you want me to talk about some random something? Just ask me a question, whatever. So that's how that all got born.
And the consensus was, tell us about the books that you're reading.
Basically, yeah, tell us about the books you're reading, tell us what you're up to, like talk about books and the writing process and your life and story time and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay. So, and I'm very inconsistent with it. I've done somebody, I think about 6 months ago, I got a very nice request for someone for me to do a video review of their book that they published. And so they sent me a free copy, and I was like, well, this is cool. And so I did that and posted it. And then before that, though, there for a while, I was doing a video about once every 2 weeks or so. And I was trying to keep up with it, but it's just a lot because, I want to be doing the writing and focusing on that. And then, of course, I was starting the small business. I do have a day job as well on top of all of this. So it's me cramming all of this into the evenings and weekends. So.
And it's marketing? Is that what you do during the day?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Communications marketing. Yeah.
Communications marketing. Yeah, it's very interesting in terms of the internet fame. It faded, you said. It sounds like that didn't last as long as you wanted. And I'm wondering,
I don't even know if I should call it fame. I feel like people are going to listen to this and be like, "Oh my God, she thinks she's such a thing."
What's the definition of it in comparison to, like, oh, I'm going to stand up again.
Well, I'll tell you why I say a tiny bit of internet. I'll tell you why.
Sure.
So I had been writing fan fiction for quite some time, and it was on this particular site that unfortunately crashed and burned a few years ago. But I also did it on like AO3 and some other places too, some kind of like common places to post fan fiction. And I was really good friends with this other fandom writer. She and I were really close. It was great. And she lived in Florida. And I was actually in Nashville visiting a musician friend of mine. And I was hanging out there, and I get this text message from my friend in Florida. And she's at a BDSM club. And she says, "You're never going to believe this." And I was like, "I'm not going to believe what, tell me." And she says that she had met this girl at the club, and they started talking, and they were kind of hitting it off. And they're like, "Well, what do you like to do in your spare time?" And the girl was like, "I love reading. I love manga. I love anime. I love to read. I love fan fiction." And of course, my friend's like, "Oh my God, well, I write fan fiction, and I love it too. What do you read?" And this girl looks at my friend and says, "Have you ever heard of Dark Prism?" And that's my handle. And my friend says, "Not only have I heard of her, I've got her on speed dial." And so this girl just gets very excited. And so they call me. And so she says, I've got this girl sitting next to me. She's a fan of yours. And so I was like, okay. Well, hell, I said, call me. I said, I'll talk to her. And so I got to talk to this girl, and it was just a really surreal experience. It was just so neat to like that she finds somebody in another state, in another, whole walk of life. And she, she knew who I was. So I was like, okay. And then I used to do these things called read-alongs.
Mm.
And this was back before Microsoft had bought Skype. This is when Skype was still like an independent little thing, and audio recording was still like getting its legs underneath it and that kind of thing, like from the home. And so again, I was writing fan fiction, and I got this sort of wild idea. I was like, I read my stories out loud to edit them, because that's one of the best ways to catch, typos and things that you've messed up. And I said, I wonder if anybody would ever be interested in, hearing me do that. It's funny, right? I'm thinking mostly to myself, it's funny, and, it'd be kind of a fun thing to do. And the the artist that I'm working with, who lives in the Netherlands, she says, yes, people would absolutely be there for that. You should completely do this. So I put out a notice saying I was going to do a read along. Like, I was like, come join me. I'm going to read my smutty stories. Come see what it's like. It'll be fun. And the turnout for that was just so, I had no idea. It was so cool. Like, people actually, first of all, they showed up at all, but I had waiting lists of people to like come in, because there was only so many people that you could have on the call on Skype to kind of for it to be stable. And then like the call would just start getting really grainy and it would go all to pieces. And so we would have this thing where, I'd rotate people in as people had to go to bed or whatever, they had to sign off or whatnot. And so I'd like pull people back in. And I remember one of the coolest calls. It was so neat. We did a country call. I was like, how many countries do we have here tonight? And there were 7. Wow. I had Russia, Brazil, the Netherlands, Canada, the United States, I think Croatia. There were 7 different countries that were represented, and Multiple Volume was like, I don't know why you guys are here, but I love you for being here. Thank you so much. This is so absolutely neat and cool that you guys love the stories this much, and that I can share this with you. That is so cool. So
but
that's why I say it was like,
the carryover was lost in the anonymity of the internet. There was no carryover because you didn't want to put yourself out there in terms of your real name and where they could find you.
Well, I used to. Like, I didn't used to hide behind, pseudonyms or whatever. I do now, because I had some stalking incidents, and we had to be more careful about what we were doing, because I live in a very small town. So if you know my real name and you know generally where my town is, it's easy to find me. So, or not easy, but let's maybe not make it that easy. Right?
No, seriously.
So,
I mean, you have to hide behind something nowadays. And back in the day, I was just thinking, I mean, you had MySpace as your only real social media thing, but if you were doing things in the 90s or even earlier, you probably did have a username, right? Or were you doing things after the 90s?
it was after the 90s. This was 2000, like 13, 14, somewhere in there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're already deep into social media at that point.
Yes, exactly. So, and I really resisted. It's funny. I'm not a technophobe at all. I love it, but and again, I'm a gamer and all of this, but I really resisted the whole like smartphone and social media thing forever, because I was working at an ad agency when Facebook and Twitter kind of started to gain speed. And I remember having this conversation with, people at the agency, and they're like, we probably need to start getting on this. Like, social media marketing is going to become a thing. We need to get ahead of it, blah, 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 blah. And I can remember looking at Facebook, and this was back when Facebook was still basically like an actual college campus connection. Like, it wasn't even, it was barely anywhere out there. And I remember looking at it going, I hate this. I hate it. I want no part of this nonsense. This is going to turn into a narcissist's playground, and I want no part of it. And of course, obviously, Facebook has done a lot of good things, and there's a lot of great things to be said about social media, but I resisted getting on it for a long time.
I was just curious about everybody that I went to high school with. I joined the Army and like disappeared. It's like, oh man, I wonder what all those people are doing. It turns out they're still where they were when I graduated high school. So,
well, a lot of them are, yeah.
I'm not very good on Facebook. I love Twitter though. I love practicing typing at 280 characters, or Reddit's fantastic.
Oh yeah, Reddit is like a rabbit hole that you can just fall down for days. Yeah.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. And then the community interaction is fantastic. You can't really market yourself very well. There's not really much opportunity there. And if you try to, you're probably going to get jumped on, which is interesting, right? I mean, as a writer, you're looking for chances to show people what you can do. And you can tell people stories, but they're not going to follow you anywhere on Reddit. You're on Twitter. I think that's where I found you, right?
I have no idea where you found me. Where
I
did you
don't know
find
where I
me?
found you either.
How did you find
New
me?
Amsterdam. That's what it was. New Amsterdam. So
Yes,
circle
yes, it was
back
New Amsterdam.
around.
Yes,
I,
it was New Amsterdam. Yeah, because it was funny because when you reached out to me, I was like, okay, which personality did you find? Like which which pseudonym? Because that's going to depend on the content of the podcast, like which one you found.
no, that's very true. I mean, it sounds like you write about some interesting subjects.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely not. It's not what I would call mainstream. It's really, it's wonderful stuff, and I love telling stories there. And yeah. But
Interesting term, though, right? I mean, mainstream has been diluted. There is no really mainstream anymore. People are into what they're into, and now they can find it. And you're not stuck to those four channels, kind of like, oh, okay, I'll watch the 70s show tonight because that's all it's on. I could actually, oh, okay, I can't minimize Zoom. It was yelling at me. I can actually find your YouTube channel and be entertained by you for the next day, you know?
I mean, if you want, sure.
If I want, exactly.
Yeah,
I like
everything is
books. Why not?
yeah, everything is really, really specialized, and that's the genius of it. I mean, it's like you can go anywhere. There's a place for everybody and their fetish or their kink or their interest. You can always find a community, and that's the amazing thing about the internet is that you can always find people who are just like you. And yeah, and I did find there was a lot of I had a really good, strong, wonderful bunch of people who supported me in the fandom world. They definitely followed me into like the publishing world. That was wonderful. Um, and there's some, I mean, I think I have a couple, I don't know how many followers I have on Twitter. I think a couple of thousand, something like that. A lot of them are, writers and that sort of thing. Cause we're constantly
The
like
Mecca. Yeah.
supporting each other and that kind of stuff. And, I used to try to do a lot more with, I guess social media marketing and that kind of thing. I did. I honestly, it just kind of depends on what hat you need to wear for the day. At the moment, I'm focused on like the self-publishing hat and a little bit of the YouTube hat, and also like keeping like the plots churning in the background. It's like then at some point you switch and you just basically do nothing but write for 6 months. And then sometimes you're doing the admin and the marketing kind of stuff where it's like, okay, now I want to like pimp this. I want people to know that it's out there. I want to reach out and that kind of thing. The review circuit and getting people, doing blog tours and that kind of stuff. I've done a few of those in support of the novels and that sort of thing. So
You don't write all the time then? You take breaks?
I, I would love to say I write all the time. I think what I try to do is just be creative all the time. I think that's going to be how we're going to phrase that. Many different mediums to be creative. So we're going
Do
to
you
go that way.
feel like it stresses you out at all? I decided that I have to work on this project every single day. Whatever I write flash fiction or work on a short story, this is the thing that's on my schedule until I reach that point where either I'm not going to finish it in time or I'm done with it and I can move on. Right? I just try to really regiment myself on the schedule. Otherwise, I feel like I don't get things done I want to get done. But you can move from the writing and come back to the writing anytime you want.
Well, I mean, that makes it sound, I'm sure it's not nearly as seamless as that. I do,
Like I feel
so
like I'm paying homage to the beast every single day with sacrifices.
well, there's a lot
Here's
of
my
that.
writing for the day, old
Yes,
wise
please
one.
take my
please,
offering.
please let me write tomorrow too.
Yes, no, God, I feel that. Yes, I mean, there's a lot of God, whatever it is I am doing that is allowing the story to come through. Please let me keep doing that.
That's
There's
your passion then, right? I mean, what other
yeah,
what's your creative pursuits outside? What are your
yeah.
creative pursuits? What are your other creative pursuits outside of writing? I know
YouTube,
music, YouTube.
self-publishing. I do.
Well, that's promotional stuff, isn't it? Do you count that as creative also?
I do.
Or is
Well,
that
it
more of the
takes a lot.
writing stuff?
Look, there was a lot of creative blood, sweat, and tears in figuring out editing software, friend. I don't know if you've ever journeyed into the land of actually doing, video editing.
No, a little bit, because to put stuff on YouTube, you have to have an MP4, and I only put a static image up, but it was a pain in the ass. I feel like I could do more, but again, it's
Mhm.
one of those things where I think I could spend hours doing it and really enjoy it, but I could also spend those hours on something that,
I mean, and I definitely have that heartburn too sometimes,
yeah,
where it's like I
I
feel
can
like I spend my
relate to
weekends
that.
doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But but I do say this, normally when I am writing, when I'm in like full writing mode, right? I'm working on a project. So there's one actively being spun, there's one getting edited, and then I'm usually trying to market one. So at any given moment, I don't read one book at a time. I don't write one story at a time. I don't do one creative pursuit at a time. I have to do this sort of jumping from thing. Otherwise, my brain does this. I don't know if it's ADD. I don't know what's going on here, but if it gets too deep into one thing, it's almost like it ceases to be as clear. It's almost like if working on different things, I think it's just like a level of being kind of just busy. There's like I like to say that I am a manager of moderate chaos, and in moderate chaos is my productivity. So like, for example, today I did a video this morning. I filmed for a couple of hours. I'm talking to you now. This afternoon, I'm either probably going to edit that video or at least look at it, make sure that it's not terrible and needs to be redone. Over this course of this weekend, I'm going to be doing more rewrites on King of Nightmare. I'm an intensely list addicted person. So I have a list of content edits and things like that I need to take care of. I know the next section I'm tackling and I know what I'm going to be doing there. So I'm going to knock that out. I've also got a section coming back to me. My friend Henley and I right now, we're doing a fun little project. We're basically, Henley writes 1,000 words and then passes the story back to me. And then I write 1,000 words and pass the story back to Henley, and back and forth we go. So I'm getting ready to get that.
That's fascinating. Do you find yourself stepping on each other's toes at all, or wanting to edit each other's work, or is there a rule where?
Oh, we do. Look, you don't want, like, we talked a little bit about this in email. Like, you have to be very careful in how you phrase, Dee, I'd like you to edit for me.
Especially when you're saying, hey, I want 1,000 words, please send me 1,000 words. And that's a lot of effort. That's several days worth of.
Well, I mean, I tend to write something between 3,000 and 5,000 words when I sit down and do my writing. And that's going to be probably 3,000 words that I keep that doesn't get put on the editing cutting floor, right?
Let me ask you a quick question before you go on. When you write your 3,000 to 5,000 words a day, are you content with those words at the end of the day, and you do not go back to them until you start to rewrite on the total project?
I actually do. My editing process is multi-tiered. So I'm writing and I will get down to the bottom and be like, okay, and what I call it, like laying down the bones. So you lay down the bones of whatever it is you're doing and whatever points you want to hit in whatever chapter, section, however you're writing it, right? So you lay down those bones, and then when I start to do the next section, I go back and I'll put some meat on them, right? To be like, okay, I want to tweak this, I want to tweak that, I want to do this, I want to make sure it's like I didn't lapse into Greek or Gaelic or something, right? Make sure like I'm still speaking English. And then you put the next section down and rinse, repeat. So I do some editing as I go, because that helps me keep the continuity in my head, especially if I'm working on like a long project. Now, if I'm working on a shorter one, different process, but a long project, especially one like, I'm thinking of Nightmare is like a 400-page book. So you're doing like a long one, you've got to have some continuity as you're going. And then when I'm done, I'll do one edit pass myself, just reading it out loud. I print out, because I kill trees, so sorry, but if like reading it on paper helps you see things that you don't see on screen. And then as I'm going, depending on what it is, I also have what I call beta listeners. So I have a wonderful, amazing group of people who put up with me, and they listen to me read my story out loud. So I'll read my
story out loud. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll read my rough draft out loud to them, and then find the places that I'm like, okay, and this sounds like complete shit, so I need to redo this. And so I'll redo that as I'm going. And then after all of that is done, so we have hit the end, we have written those terms. I guess I've written the end and read through my read-through, and then done usually the reading happens as I'm going. Then it's like it usually gets one more comb through before it either goes to publisher, or I mean, in King of Nightmare's particular instance, like I was doing it chapter piecemeal and like out for patrons, right? So in that case, it was like sort of like editing the chapters as I was going, and as I was doing that, I was like, oh, and that doesn't work as well as I think it does, and I need to make a note here. So I'm actually rewriting some of the stuff as I'm going. So that's kind of how I work.
It sounds like you have amazing energy, honestly. Like you go and go and go, and you don't have any problem with it going.
I have been told that before. A good friend of mine, actually, last week, she was like, you do so much, it makes me tired. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
You have to keep lists, right? I mean, it sounds like you're doing so much that if you don't, you're not going to be able to pick up where you stopped.
You're not going to figure out where the heck you are. And I don't know what it is about my brain that it's just grace. I don't know. I don't think there's a trick to it, so to speak, or anything like that. I think it's just a lot of attention to detail and that kind of thing. It's interesting because I'm a very anxious person. I have chronic anxiety and that kind of stuff, and I've often
How could you
wondered if
not? I mean,
right.
you're basically putting yourself at war almost on a daily basis. I've got a list, and
Oh, that's
I
actually
will
really
tackle it.
comforting. Thank you. It's actually
Over
kind
the
of
breach. Tackle that list.
no,
I
that's actually
I lackadaisically approach my deadlines. Okay, how are we doing? Oh, you're gonna fail again. Okay, let's set another deadline.
oh.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
I mean,
I
are they
was in
dead?
the army. I'm done with that. I don't want to be drill sergeant anymore.
Right. Well, and I mean, and I can't imagine that experience, right? Or maybe I can. I don't know. Maybe
No,
it's
I
like
think you can, but you would be the one wearing the Smokey Bear hat. You,
yeah, true.
you would have the chevrons telling people what to do because you have the energy. All the privates are like, oh my God, here she comes again.
Yeah, please duck, cover. Don't let her see me. I don't know. I thank you. That's a huge compliment. But no, yeah, no, and that's yeah. So like right now with this 1,000 words back and forth, I'm actually making a concerted effort not to edit as we go, which Henley greatly appreciates. No, Henley teases me all the time about my editing, but actually really it's one of those things like only I can speak badly of my brother or my sister, right? So Henley can tease the crap out of me about my editing and like my perfectionism, but anybody else doesn't, like, Henley's going to defend me, right? It's just kind of fun. But
So you'll go back in and offer notes on the 1,000 words, just
I
notes.
will. I mean, and just like something, and we do talk about like what we're doing. Like we're writing, it's a short story, so it's going to be under 20,000 words. So we're, I say 20. I could actually hear Henley being like, 15. We said 15. Anyway.
Well, but that's a novelette, right? I mean, it's not a short story anymore after 9.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we're aiming to, because JMS Books has different tiers of things that they publish. They do like they do super short fiction, then they do like short story fiction, then they do novella, and they do full novel. And there's different levels of marketing, I guess, that goes along with each of those. So we're trying to hit a certain kind of word count or whatever. And I'm
A
actually
lot of those speculative fiction publications like Clark's World and Strange World, they want length novellas and stuff like that. People like that stuff. They like to be engaged for free online.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I think of Stephen King in Green Mile, right? He wrote that as a serial fiction and like little segments and did gangbusters, right? I mean, it's a really interesting format on how to do that. Anyway, moving on. But so I try not to edit, but of course we do talk about the plot and like what's going on there and everything. And then when it's done, because we're two authors and we'd have I mean, our styles do mesh well, but I mean, there's still two different styles. You have to go through and kind of clean up. And also Henley's Canadian, so occasionally lapses into, Canadian English as opposed to American English. And we have to arm wrestle about who's going to get what. And so
all the use, just break
all the use. I mean, favorite does look prettier with the U, I have to say.
Yeah, I agree. I like the U's in the words, color and labor, or whatever. I spell them wrong. I cut my teeth on C.S. Lewis. I read those books constantly as a child, and I mess up all the time. I put U's in everything.
Yeah. I mean, C.S. Lewis is, would you do like Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe or Screw Tape Letters, or what's your fave?
The whole thing. Oh, which one of the book? I like the last one. There's something about the afterlife. They finally make it to, what was it? The end? It was like something like that. I love that book. I love the idea of actually all of them getting back together again and all these characters, and the world was falling apart, but they could still be together in this paradise. It was neat. I like that book.
God, there's nothing better in fiction than like bringing all the characters back together, isn't there? I mean, like,
no, it's so fitting. I mean, that's what you
wonderful.
want. It's like you have this great group of people that, you love them. They have such good friendships, and then they split up, and you're like, oh, wait. Get back together again, guys. You're better off together.
No, totally. Yeah. I mean, that's why I loved, I'm an Anne Rice fan, or at least I was kind of pre-Jesus movement. And
she's done with that now, though, isn't she?
She is, apparently. Thank Jesus. But yeah, so back to, and I also love her son. I don't know if you've read anything by Christopher Rice, but he's done some amazing things. He's got a book called Density of Souls, which I swear is like reading literary poetry. It is beautiful writing. But Anne Rice is Queen of the Damned. That's why I liked that book so much, because there's a big scene where they bring all the cast in together, right, for the concert, kind of like the finale. And it's like, the thing had some plot holes and some issues and whatever. But I mean, my teenage self really enjoyed those books, except for the last two.
I think we're about the same age. I'm the same way. Her books were amazing. I loved them. I read them over and over again.
Oh yeah, and Ramses the Damned and all of those. And I think I have like 3 or 4 of hers sitting around that I haven't read yet that are from I guess the post-Jesus, anyway, whatever.
I
But
haven't been
yeah.
able to get back into her, honestly. I think the last one I read was when Lestat went to heaven, or I tried to read it, or something along those lines. It
Wasn't
was
that
a long
Memnoch or
Memnon,
whatever?
the devil. That was when
Yeah.
he inhabited the human, I think, and he wanted his
Right.
vampire body back, or something along those
Right. No,
lines.
and there's Tale of the Body Thief too. It's like, no, I loved Blood and Gold and Blackwood Farm. I liked those. I liked the
Blood and
first, and
Gold, I think, is the Jesus one where he inhabits Jesus
maybe it
or something.
is. Oh God, I don't remember.
I love it. She's so great. What a character. Like, if you're going to have a literary character be an author, that's who you want. Right? She really embodies what she's trying to do. She's out now, right? She's not straight. She's not like typically closeted. She'll express herself, put
Mm-hmm.
herself out
Mm-hmm.
there in strange, uncomfortable positions. Her husband
Mm-hmm.
was a weirdo in a way. I don't know what his
Stan,
situation was.
dear Stan Rice and his poetry. Yeah, he
He was
wrote
a
some
poet.
interesting poetry. Yeah.
Never read a word that he wrote, but I mean, Anne Rice is incredible. Like
You gotta go deep with your obsessions, Bryan. Deep. You gotta get in there.
like that's a great example. She went deep. Are
Yes, she
you
did.
prepared to go that deep? I know we're at an hour right now, but are you prepared to go that deep for your listeners?
For my what now? Come back.
Your readers.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I have done. Oh Lord, the stories. Like we could do a whole other podcast on just the weird stories and the things that I've done and the people I've met. Yes. Let's go deep and strange because yeah. I mean, I'm
Would you call that a
interested in.
persona, or would you call that Anne Rice? Would you call
Uh,
what you would do a persona, or would that be you?
I think it's me. I think I'm sort of one of those unfortunate like this is just what you get kind of people. I mean, I think there's some stuff that there's layers. There's like some people get to see this part, some people get to see this part, and as you go deeper and as we know each other longer and trust develops or whatever, you get to find out exactly how strange I am. But I mean, I
That's
think
neat about it, isn't it? I mean, I'm listening to you talk. I'm
you
like,
could
okay,
certainly read about it. There's all kinds of stuff out there to read, friend.
so what do you have coming up immediately that we should be aware of?
What do I have coming up
Do you
immediately?
have anything that being published, or where's your Patreon? Where do we go to contribute?
It's called Demented Tours. And
And
I'm more than happy to send like links and all that other stuff we can talk about, like all of that. Yeah, my Patreon is Demented Tours, and it used to be Demented Inc. INK, but then I I kind of woke up one morning and I was listening to someone tell me a business plan. I know that sounds really strange for most people. For me, it's kind of like, well, it must be Tuesday. But I woke up in the morning and there was someone telling me like, this is what you need to do with your life. And it wasn't like they were in the room. This was, yeah, I don't know, whatever. And so I was like, okay. And part of that was like branching out and doing different things and creative mediums. Like, don't just limit it to the writing or whatever. I was like, well, I wasn't limited to the writing already. I was doing videos. I was doing this. I was doing that. I've done audio recordings. I've done what else? What do you want of me? So I've tried to spend. Well, I guess on the to be created list is art and jewelry, and so that's what Demented Tours kind of tries to encapsulate. It's like there's videos and there's also like stuff about stories and that kind of stuff. And I have a small but very patient and wonderful crowd of patrons. I love them all very dearly.
I mean, that must feel so good to have a community.
It does. It really does. It's hard to. I think that's one of the reasons why because there was a lot of loss in my life from 2012 through in 2013 in particularly, and then definitely on into 2015. And a lot of it was losing community, feeling like I was losing friends. I was losing touch with people that, were dear to me. I was losing relatives and family. A couple of websites that I really loved and had a lot of connections with, they went down.
Gawker?
Do what?
Gawker? Was that one of them?
No, no.
Gawker went down around that time, Brian. I only know because my wife was really devastated. She loved that
No, it was not. But we there was just a lot of loss, and so I think it was interesting about the journey that I've gone through with King of Nightmares. It's like it started out just me like writing a horror fantasy novel, but it's turned into I need to find a way to make a home and a nest for myself and all of the like creative things that I love that are in one place. Let's make a business. Let's have a website. I've done website design professionally, and I've also made all of my own, and so like, let's just make a home for this. Like, let's give a place where all of this can live, that I control, that I know isn't going to like be, you know, subject to the whims of the universe and the gods of technology. And, you know, as long as the world keeps ticking and the internet keeps going, you know, it's like, let's make a place for all of this to be. So, and that's what the Patreon is. And it's kind of all connected, just a place to just be a creative weirdo.
And now we're connected. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. It's so cool to be able to reach out to somebody just because they're writing about something, 2 words, just New Amsterdam that you're interested in. You do a Google search. And
I
all of a
can't
sudden,
believe you found me that way, by the way.
there's all of a
That's some
sudden
impressive Google foo.
like this full-blooded person with an actual personality that's willing to talk to you out of the blue just because you happen to have these 2 words in contact.
Mm-hmm. I've loved reading some of your stuff. I've read The Water That Runs Red, and oh goodness, it's the one about the guy who gets put in prison because he finds the gun and they don't understand how it went so far back into the past.
Oh God, yeah, that's one of my favorite pieces.
Yes, that one was neat. Yeah, like where I was going through. Yeah, it's
I don't know about
cool
the
stuff.
title, because there is a wrinkle in time too, but a fold in time. Yeah, that's my favorite.
A Fold in Time. That's what it was. A Fold in Time, and yeah, no, I really liked those two a lot. And then read, was it Zombies, or it wasn't Zombies? Rombies? Bombies?
I don't know.
I don't.
I don't write about zombies though, so it probably wasn't zombies.
No, that was something. I can't remember what it was. It was an alternative history kind of thing. There was a wedding, and there was a lot of like chaos and things happening. Anyway, it was all good. It was fun to like look through your website.
I appreciate you looking at my stuff. Usually my guests have no idea what I do when I talk to them. It really makes. I'm smiling and walking around pacing that you read my
Hell
stuff.
yeah!
I'm so
Are you
tickled.
kidding? I was like, who is Bryan Aiello, and why does and I have no idea if I'm saying that right. Is that right? Aiello?
Aiello, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I read, and then like you've done a lot of audio stuff where people have like audio narrated on both on YouTube and on there was a publishing or like a little like outfit that like put out your stuff that way too, which was a really interesting twist. I'd not actually seen that done. That's cool. Like
That's all they do too, and they also publish anthologies. Brickman.
Brick Moon, yes, thank you. That's what it was.
Yeah, they're a neat group. Jason T. Reed, it's his production company.
Mm-hmm.
He's a producer in Los Angeles. He had a TV show on Amazon, ABC a few years ago, and they've been doing this publishing thing for a little while. It's really neat working with somebody. Like, you know, you write a piece and then you put it on your website and it gets views and nobody says anything, but you send it to a professional and they send you words back and you're collaborating. I like that a lot.
Yeah, no, collaborating with like writing is such a like in creative in general, like but writing particularly is such a solitary process. I mean, it's just you and your word processor, like and like sweat and blood and prayer, right? That's all it is. So it's great when you can actually be able to do a collaborative effort. So no, that was
You
really
blame
neat.
somebody else for all the problems. This is
Oh, totally. That's why we do it.
Again, it's so wonderful to talk to you. If you ever want to come back on, you have a subject in mind, let me know. You want to help you publish, you want to talk about the book you published. I'm happy to have you back on.
Well, maybe I will get back in touch with you when I finally get this King of Nightmare thing out and done. I want to do like about a 8-part video series on my YouTube channel about like the entire process, because again, it's been a journey and I think it's just kind of interesting just to like watch somebody else like this is what I've done in order to get this book out there. And I don't know, maybe that might be interesting to some people. So maybe we can touch base after all that's done.
Totally, 100%. Reach out to me. Send me an email. I'll be looking. You know, I think Twitter does some algorithm things. If you do some of these, you search for somebody, you know, they tweet, they show up more in your feed. So hopefully you'll show up in my feed.
Sounds good.
I'm disappointed also that we didn't get into your paranormal stuff.
I know there's so much stuff there with
I
like paranormal.
Wanted specifically to say, did you ever see any ghosts in the haunted house? You met the filmmakers in, and we just never got back to that point. So there's like the whole subject there. I want to do a tribute.
Well, I will leave you with this. If you've not, have you seen Hellier?
No.
No. Oh my God. Oh my God. Greg Newkirk and his wife Dana. Okay. Go onto Amazon Prime or however you need to get there, right? Search for Hellier, and it's Hellier. You can email about this and geek out later if you want to.
Okay.
But they are paranormal investigators. They also do a traveling museum of the weird. They are just amazingly cool people. They have a Patreon that is just like, it's what every Patreon wants to grow up and be when it gets older. And they are just really cool people. And they did this series called Hellier, and it starts out with a guy who says he's got a problem with some goblins in Kentucky. And what I love about this is It's in my neck of the woods. Like it's literally kind of in my backyard. And they or in in Hellier, Kentucky that's why it's called Hellier. It's an actual place. And yeah, it's amazing little show. It's about synchronicities and about how things line up and just them being completely freaked out by like stuff lining up and the signs and stuff like that to keep looking. What does it mean? It brings in like all kinds of stuff. Everything from like the god pan to goblins to ghosts. It's amazing.
Oh, fantastic. I'll check it out. Sounds like a lot like Supernatural or...
It is, except it's a documentary. Like it's actually
it's a documentary.
Yeah, like this is like actually them, you know, investigating things in the real world in real time and finding real problems.
I was stationed in Kentucky, Fort Campbell.
Really? Okay, Fort Campbell. Yeah.
It's a horrible place.
Kentucky is just not, well, I mean, you know.
And I lived on the opposite side of the state in Huntington, West Virginia, the tri-state area over there. It's I don't know, your guys' center. We won't get into it, but
don't even. I'm not in Kentucky. I don't live there, and I don't live in West Virginia either. So can't blame them. But no,
well, I'm not gonna try to get you to put a pin in the map or anything.
Thank you.
The whole area of the country is so spooky in a way. It's got so much history.
It is. Well, it's the Appalachians, man. They're the oldest mountain range here, and it's there's a lot of blood and magic in them there hills.